What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I think today is the day we get a close look at my Porsche 924S for the first time. I haven't had it on the lift yet since I bought it. I drove it 3 hours home from Blairsville, Georgia, where my friend Elliot Grafton is located. 944 Barn. If you don't follow him on Instagram, check him out. He's got over 50 944, 951, 968, 924 platform cars. It's quite insane. So he's the 944 guy, if you need any of that stuff. But I bought the 1987 924S from him back a couple of months ago. Drove it home, no problems. Really haven't had a chance to look at it at all since then. Just kind of checked fluids, and I've actually been daily driving the car. And what else I know is it's a rust-free car. Completely solid. Original paint car too, which is pretty awesome. It's a slick top car, which is my favorite part. I basically jumped on this car because it's a slick top, no sunroof. I kind of crawled under it at Elliot's to get a good look underneath. Good enough to where I could tell it was rust-free. But today, we're gonna get it on the lift for the very first time. I've got a little over a month to get that car ready for Alpine Volks Fair in Helen, Georgia. My girlfriend's gonna be taking her Porsche 944 as well. We just finished building some BBS RSs for that car, and I still have to go through my BBS RSs for the 924S. I've got to relip them, polish them up. I got to paint the center hexes, but I think I'm going to leave the faces black. They're in great shape, and I think the black faces with polished lips will look great on the red 924 with all the black trim and tinted windows and all of that. So I'm going to get the 700 out of here. We're going to pull the 924 right in, take a close look at it. I am multitasking on the Wookiees in the Woods Awards. Abe, who puts that show on, has come to me the last few years. I think we're on year five or six now that I've been making these wooden plaques for the Wookiees in the Woods event, which is an R32, a Volkswagen R32 meet. They drive the tail of the dragon. Really cool kind of interactive show. They have like a show with vendors, and then they drive the tail of the dragon. It looks like a really cool event with a bunch of really cool all-wheel drive Volkswagens. So working on those right now. So we are multitasking today because those take quite a while to engrave, and then I hand sand them to clean up all the wood burning engraving. And we got about 92 to make. So I got a stack of those things to make. So while I'm working on everything else, the machine's gonna run. I'm gonna start plugging it now. If you or anyone you know is an Auto Union DKW nerd, I think sooner than later I'm gonna unload my 62 1000 SP. I've wanted to keep all of this stuff around while I was building my 60 in case there was anything I might need, because these cars are so rare. But I am already pretty sick of that 62 taking up all the real estate inside my enclosed trailer, which we took to Import Alliance in Atlanta that you guys saw in the last episode. So I had to empty that whole trailer out, roll that car out, it doesn't run, to get the 700 and my whole boot setup in there and all the parts. I mean, front end components. I mean, I've got motors, 3-cylinder, 2-stroke motors, probably 6 engines, generators, clutches, crankcases, totes and totes of parts, new old stock parts, all sorts of insane Auto Union DKW parts. If you guys cycle back on the videos, if you're new to the channel, and if you're interested in any of this stuff, or the whole lot basically, go back and watch the episode where I acquired the 62 1000 SP, the German market one, with the garage full of all these parts, and you'll get a good look at, a detailed breakdown of what I have. I think I'm going to start liquidating that simply because I'm going Beetle Pan in mine, and I'm not going to need any of the mechanicals. All right, guys, let's take a look underneath the 924S for the very first time. And this thing is solid. I can't stress this enough. I said this when I put the EF Civic on the lift for the first time as well. It blows my mind how solid some of these cars can be down in the South. Being from New Hampshire, they salt the roads for almost 6 months out of the year, and cars just don't last. A car like this might be garaged its whole life. You know, when you buy a Porsche in 1987, up there, it might just be a summer vehicle. You know, it might not be driven ever in the salt. So a car like this, like a Porsche, you might be able to find this solid up in New Hampshire. But most other cars, especially EF Civics and other stuff that is bought to be a commuter car that's driven in the winters up there, they don't survive. And to see frame rails like this, floors that are still here, but most importantly, pinch welds. I mean, this here is just insane. The floors, I mean, no rot anywhere in the floors. And these pinch welds are just brand new. And I know if you live down here, you probably hear this a lot from us Northerners, but all you boys from the North, you know what I'm talking about. This is insane. A 1987 German car that should have battleship holes in it from all the salt from all over the years. I mean, especially in the back of the front wheel wells. Brake lines look like they're in great shape. Fuel lines look like they're in great shape. Looks like Elliot did a fuel pump and fuel filter. He did a few other things too. He did a timing belt on this. He did a water pump. I don't remember what other maintenance he did, but a lot of that looks new. Belts are in okay shape. So I'll bring it down a little bit, get the wheels off, get a closer look at the suspension, and I'll let you guys know where my head is at as far as what I think I really want to do with this car at the given moment until we start measuring, and things might change as always. All right, so we've got the wheels off the Porsche, and I'll show you guys the suspension setup on these cars. Now the 924S is basically the same suspension, as the 944. So we're basically working with 944 components in this car. So anything you see on this channel done to this car, you could also do to a 944, with the exception of wheel offsets, because this is a narrow body car and the 944 has the real wide box fenders. So wheel offsets are going to be far different. Most of you guys may already know this, but the 924 was Volkswagen's project. Basically, Volkswagen hired Porsche to design the 924 before they came out with the Scirocco. So the 924 was basically built using Volkswagen parts. Front suspension is basically Mark 1, Super Beetle and Mark 1. Rear suspension is Bus and Beetle, being a rear transaxle and subframe setup. Brakes, I think, are from the K70, which was NSU technically. I mean, Volkswagen bought NSU when they went bankrupt, and they had already developed the K70, so Volkswagen basically just put Volkswagen badges and then called the K70 theirs, but really, as far as I know, had no say in the design or R&D in the K70. So this has K70 parts, Super Beetle and Mark 1 parts, bus parts, and it originally had a 2-liter Volkswagen Audi 4-cylinder in it. The 924S, though, as I said in the last episode of this car, the 924S is Porsche motor. It's the 2.5 Porsche design motor, because when the 944 came out, Porsche developed a 2.5 motor that was all their own. And so when they made the 924S, this was a 2-year production only car using the 944 drivetrain and 2.5 engine, basically making the 924S a narrow body slab side 944, which I think is so cool. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about in this episode, and as I just mentioned before, might change once I start pulling some measurements on the car. I think I'm going to bag it. I'm going to do air suspension in this 924S. Now, I agree. Yes, I agree with most of you. The car deserves to be on coilovers. I do not look at a hatchback German sports car as an airbagged project. I really don't. I look at these cars as being on coilovers and being like mountain carvers, time attack cars, you know, built for the racetrack. That being said, since there's not an off-the-shelf bolt-in kit available for these cars, I think this is a perfect opportunity to kind of put one together. The overall goal of bagging this car is going to be to get it to ride as well as it would if it was on coilovers. So keep that in mind throughout this build process. As long as it can work, I really want to avoid having to use sleeve bags, which I might have to do in the rear because of space. Normally when you do coilover conversions in these cars, you put the coilover right where the shock is, and it's pretty tight in there. There's not a lot of space. There's a bolt up top and a bolt at the bottom. So my initial thought would be to use Airlift Performance's Builder Kit series that comes with eyelet to eyelet mounting bags. And you can get them with dual bellow, single bellow, and sleeve bags. Problem is I think a single and dual bellow bag is gonna be too wide of a diameter to fit in here without hitting anything once you start getting range of motion or suspension articulation. Now, in the front, this is very similar to Mark I Volkswagen. You got your 2 bolts on the knuckle and coilover setup, and the only thing that's different is the 4-bolt top hat. If you guys remember about 2 years ago when I built the German market 2F Polo, when I bagged that car, I utilized the Mark I Airlift front struts. So they bolted right in. Those, I believe, were a sleeve bag. But the Mark II, I think, is a dual bellow bags. That might be the deciding factor. If I can get Mark II fronts to work and they're dual bellow bags, we're going that route. So here's what we're looking at in the rear. You've got your transaxle back here, independent rear suspension, big trailing arm, and then your shock. And the actual sprung part of the suspension comes from your torsion bars, which are inside here. And a lot of times what Beetle guys do, and a lot of these guys, you may have seen when we lowered Kayla's 944 here in the shop, we dropped the whole rear suspension, pull this end cap, pull the spring plate out, and then re-index the splines 1 or 2 clicks up, so immediately this rear hub is re-indexed up 3 or 4 inches. So when you lower the car, you now have an immediate 3 or 4 inch drop. A lot of guys will only go 1 click, and that gets you a couple inch drop. We went 2 clicks on Kayla's car. That brought it pretty low to the ground. So if you're gonna do a coilover conversion or bag it, you basically have to drop this whole rear end out so you can get this cap off to get the spring plate out and pull the torsion bar out all together. And the coilover conversions take place right here where the shock is. And it essentially takes a whole coilover right there, and that's where the entire suspension of the car in the back is held. My thought process is with bagging the car, that's where we're gonna put it. I'm gonna try to utilize Airlift Performance's Builder Kit, which has an eyelet on the bottom and an eyelet on the top, and hopefully a bag that can fit right in this open space. Going coilovers in this car will not be the end of the world. I'm actually still super excited to do either of these suspension conversions. Lots to figure out. That's where we're at right now in the car. Wanted to bring you guys along with the first look underneath, trying to figure out what we're gonna do. Coilovers or bags. Bags will be involved, but it'll be fun. That's gonna do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Riverside's coming up in just 2 weeks, so we got a lot going on. Gonna be prepping for Riverside here in Chattanooga. If you're in the Southeast or just want to go for a road trip, get here to Riverside April 15th here in Chattanooga. It is worth making the trip out to. Before I moved here to Chattanooga, I was hauling a car 20 hours one way to Chattanooga from New Hampshire every April for the show. It was worth it. It was even worth moving to Chattanooga for. So excited for that to come up. Hope to see you guys there. And if not, we'll see you in the next episode.